I heard it, a low, droning sound, like a buzzing light in an empty room. Creeping down the taps, drains, and his sleeves, the mold was everywhere. The rain shouldn't have been pouring that much, nor the wind blowing that strong, nor the road that damaged. Anything for you, sir? The bartender interrupted my thoughts. Alcohol, I replied. He poured a transparent liquid into a glass, revealing mold on both the bottle and his hand. There you go, the man said, while handing me the glass now full of a transparent liquid. Exhausted, I drank it, then moved to a corner table in the deserted bar. The storm-battered town lacked nightlife, with only a gas station, motel, and bar. The bar, reminiscent of a tool shed, was adorned with old teal wallpaper, cracks revealing encroaching mold. An old hockey match replayed on a television above the bar. I stayed at that table for about 15 minutes. The drink definitely was stronger than beer, as I was already feeling some of its effects. As I got up, I almost stumbled out of the rotten wooden chair. That was when the noise started intensifying. It grew louder, now uttering cryptic words: join, fire, glass house, us. It said ... I was struggling to walk. My legs felt like lead, my feet like anchors ... You heard it, growled the man at the bar ... I blacked out ... I woke up staring at the ceiling, slightly familiar from when I had arrived in town earlier. I was in the motel. My legs weren't hurting like the night before. Or maybe that was because my hands were hurting more. I pushed back the sheets to reveal my hands, my fingers covered in dark red blood. The sheets were dirtied the same color. Through the blood, I could see that I no longer had nails. I got up and went to the small bathroom that was in the room. I cleaned my fingers of as much blood I could, the contact with the water hurting, no matter if it was cold or hot. I wasn't at the bar anymore, but low droning noise was still there. It was not coming from my fingers, which were entirely covered in a layer of the mold, clearly coming out of where my nails had been before. There was no way there was anyone with medical experience anywhere in this town, and I had to leave. Coming out of the motel, I nearly fell to the ground with the side of the bar. On the other side of the road, now a ruin, it didn't look new either. I ran back inside, almost screaming at the receptionist. What happened to the bar? Burned down a decade ago. Owner defrauded the insurance company, trying to get rid of a mold problem, she said. I ran to my car and frantically got back on the road, but not northwest, like I was supposed to go. Southeast was the way, to the glass house. I can't do it, Andy whimpered. I know exactly what it will look like, and it's too soon. I can't face it right now. It was nothing but a swirling mist, hovering a couple feet above the wooden floorboards, about 3 feet in diameter. It didn't approach us. Maybe it was as scared of us as we were of it. Right now, at least, it was confused by the presence of multiple people. It couldn't harm us in this form, but we couldn't hurt it either. Only when it was in a more solid form could we kill it. Its more solid forms were the problem, though it would transform into what we most feared. I think I can face it, Deshan said hesitantly, but I don't think that will help you, Andy. It's going to be the same. We'd picked this house for a reason, but it clearly had its downsides. We should have expected that. While the house was a prime conduit to contact Leela, it was also a gateway for all sorts of more dangerous spirits. Inconspicuous, but Riley's eyes met mine. It's gotta be you, Diego, she pleaded. You were the only one who wasn't there. We'll be right behind you, ready to face your fear. I was personally in favor of not facing it that all and just leaving the damn house. I was 90% sure Leela wouldn't know the answer anyway if we're live witnesses. Said he was masked and unrecognizable. What clue could Leela send us? The words strangled in my throat as everyone looked at each other and took a step back. In a flash, the boogeyman transformed. It was you, she rasped, blood pouring from where a knife was plunged into her chest. You did this to me. I gaped at the bleeding body, exactly as I remembered her, and my eyes turned to look at my friends. They almost looked like caricatures of the stages of grief. Andy was shaking her head in denial. Drew's face twisted in anger as he looked at me with pure hatred. Riley's eyes questioned mine, pleading with me to make it not true. while Deshan nearly deflated. And here I was, having no choice but to accept the only path forward. I turned back to the Bogeyman and wrenched the knife from its chest. The Bogeyman had done its job well. This was exactly what I was afraid of. I was going to the big time. Imagine me, a hick from nowhere, Ohio, getting a role in one of the biggest movies of the summer. For 12 years, I had been out in LA and all I had on my resume was a background role in a fast food commercial. They didn't even let me eat the burger. My persistence had paid off. Folks back home were about to see me as a superhero. The studio arranged an elite regimen for me to get in shape for my breakout. It's totally understandable. I was kinda doyant if I was going to vie for People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. I needed to trim the midsection. They wanted all of their actors to rival Adonis. When I stepped on set, my body fat percentage had to be in the single digits. As a massive fan of the factory's output, I was well aware of the program that awaited me. I liked my grease and butter, but it would be some time before I tasted something good again. Grilled chicken and rice. That was the designated bland flavoring all the hunks and starlets bemoaned in press junkets. I was no fan of the combo, but a few weeks of a repetitious palate would be parlayed into years of windfall. For the first time in my life, a limo picked me up and ushered me to the infamous complex. In addition to horking down a pound of boring bites, I would be undergoing Olympic echelon training. They assured me I probably wouldn't fatally overexert myself and had me sign an NDA stating I was to reveal nothing about pre-production to any outlet, not even Mom and Dad. Some might find that shady. I thought it was an induction into a cool club. "You ready to hit the gym?" the hired beefcake asked me after I battled through the first batch of my foreseeable menu. Nodding my head, he led me to the other side of the complex. It was like no YMCA I ever been to. Even if you weren't big on pumping iron, you had to appreciate the beauty. Exhausting myself with curls, burpees and sprints, my trainer fetched an IV. It wasn't water that pumped into my veins. My 12-inch biceps doubled in size, my adipose melted in the blink of an eye and my neck grew tight. I looked like a Crash Bandicoot boss. I was fucking yoked. Nothing was gonna stand in my way. "Sorry, we cut your line," an intern called me while I was recuperating in the hospital after the shoot. Turns out toting around 100 pounds of muscles you grew in 10-second screws with your insides. Disappointed, I allowed my pleading organs to tap out. I played that aggrieved bystander with the collateral damaged car with aplomb. Maybe someone would release the rough cut someday, earning me posthumous acclaim. Samantha and Mark were ecstatic when they finally found their dream apartment in the city. It was a beautiful building with a spacious layout, large windows, and a stunning view of the skyline. They couldn't believe their luck when they managed to snag the last available unit. The couple quickly settled into their new home, excited to start their new life together. They met their neighbors, who seemed friendly enough. But something about them seemed off. It was as if behind that friendly smile was a past full of sinister memories. However, Samantha and Mark brushed it off as they were too caught up in the excitement of their new home. But as days went by, strange things began to happen. Samantha noticed that her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, always seemed to be sharpening knives in her kitchen. Another neighborhood, Mr. Smith, would often be seen carrying large garbage bags out of his apartment late at night. At first, Samantha thought it was just her imagination. But then she started to piece together the odd behaviors of her neighbors. She confided in Mark, but he dismissed it as her being paranoid. However, Samantha couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off about their neighbors. One day, Samantha found a newspaper article in the trash chute about a serial killer who was on the loose in the city. The article mentioned that the killer's signature was to sharpen his knives before each murder. Samantha's heart skipped a beat as she remembered seeing Mrs. Jenkins doing the same thing. Feeling uneasy, Samantha decided to do some research on her neighbors. After hours of digging through public records, she discovered that every single one of her neighbors had a criminal record, and all of them were for murder. Samantha was horrified. She immediately called the police, but they dismissed her claims, saying that there was no evidence to support her theory. Mark still didn't believe her and thought that she was overreacting. But Samantha knew she had to do something before it was too late. Determined to prove her suspicions, Samantha decided to do some investigations of her own. She snuck into her neighbors' apartments while they were out and found evidence that confirmed her worst fears. Mrs. Jenkins had a collection of knives and other weapons hidden in her kitchen, while Mr. Smith had a room filled with strange and disturbing objects. Samantha also discovered that the building's landlord, Mr. Peterson, was the mastermind behind it all. He would lure tenants into the building, and then his neighbors would kill them, making it seem like accidents or disappearances. Samantha was terrified, knowing that they were living in a building full of serial killers. She tried to convince Mark to leave, but he refused, thinking that she was just being paranoid. But Samantha knew she had to get out of there before it was too late. One night, while Samantha and Mark were sleeping, they were abruptly woken up by a loud noise. Samantha quickly realized that it was coming from their neighbor's apartment. She looked out the window and saw that Mr. Peterson was dragging a body bag into his car. Samantha and Mark knew they had to leave immediately. They packed their bags and ran out of the building, not looking back. As they were driving away, they saw the police arriving at the building, and they knew that they had made the right decision. The couple never looked back and moved to a different city, trying to forget the horrors they had experienced in their old apartment building. They never found out what happened to their neighbors, but they were grateful to have escaped with their lives.